A good day to everyone out there, irrespective of which time zone you are in at this moment. What I will do is I will try to share some images which will help you visualize a future that doesn't exist today, but towards with or towards which we are driving, right? And then I will bring together some thoughts which has been evolving, I think, ever since I started learning Sanskrit with Vladimir. It's helped unlock a dimension of thinking, um, and that dimension, a spiritual dimension connecting to the material dimension. That's the full framework that I'll end the talk with. And the sutras, which we think are the pathways to get to that future. So the real theme of the discussion is um, the rise of superconsciousness in the age of artificial intelligence. But that's too much to digest at once. So I will start from the material plane, and then we will go to the spiritual plane. Right. So this is, think of this as a very casual, fun, 5, 10, 15 minute, just a bunch of images. It's like a story. It's got three main acts, like who are we? What is going on with artificial intelligence and education in India? And then if you have a lot of students, so if you build a model and if you have a lot of students who have the capabilities to leverage artificial intelligence, what's the future that can be created? So that's sort of like the thread of the story, right? So let's start with the journey, right? So at People First, we are like deep structural players who understand, with experience gained over a decade of trying to fix the classroom education system in India. The Indian classroom education system is the largest in the world, but it doesn't have extremely high quality. It just got numbers. It's a very high number game, but it's not highly. It's not the most effective learning system in the world. Okay? And what we've done is, over a period of time, through many failed experiments, the real number of failures being around 20, figured out very deep structural issues inside the system, and then solutions to those structural issues, right? And because we have made such an impactful solution out there, the Ministry of Education has given us a mandate to scale the model we've built to 10% of Indian classroom system and 1% of the teacher. So it's like a huge mandate, and we are a 21-member team. But the model we've created has the power and potential to scale pretty much to like 10% of the nation. Right? This happened because mid-COVID, right, as soon as COVID was happening, we had an opportunity to build the digital infrastructure that managed the COVID war rooms for a whole state. And this was built on open source. This won recognition from the United Nations as a digital public infrastructure. It was the 50th digital public good in the world. And this was built by students along with industry experts. So during the first few days of COVID, a lot of maybe around 200 to 300 industry experts came and built the code. But rest of the maintenance and all of that was done by engineering students. And there was a person who built Aadhaar, the largest biometric identification system in the world. It's India's unique identity. The guy who was the head of engineering, along with this person called Nandan Nilekani, Srikant Nadamuni, he saw this and he realized that a lot of Indian healthcare system needs an upgrade. And now this has been, scaling up through tele-ICUs to many parts of the country. It's currently working in 10 states. And there is this work going on with IIT Bombay to infuse AI into this. So this is right at the moment when ChatGPT breaks into the scene, right? Like this whole momentum of artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, right? And we were experimenting. And Srikant went and showcased this to Sam Altman. So here is the connection, right? So Mr. Vinod Khosla was the gentleman who invested a ton of money to help India tide over the oxygen crisis. And Srikanth was the head of Khosla Labs in India. And Vinod also runs the Khosla Ventures in the US. And Khosla Ventures is an early investor in OpenAI, right? So when the labs in India was building, solutions that was interesting, it was easy to go and talk to like Sam Altman, sitting in Silicon Valley, and show him this. And these guys have way larger visions, right? Like sitting on like massive visions of how to change structural tooling for humanity, right? So they quickly understood this, right? And they said, we'll help you build a bunch of things around it. And they opened a knowledge link. So we have a live access into the um, OpenAI team, which is where some of these advanced models are being built and deployed, right? And what we're doing is we're taking this knowledge that OpenAI has, and we are mixing it with the software engineering curriculums that the Ministry of Education has asked us to teach. And we're passing it on to engineering students in the country at a price affordable to like 24 million students, which is like $4 or $5 a month. So you have to bring a bunch of things together to make this work. You've got to bring high intense technology. You've got to bring the curriculums. You've got to bring the pedagogy. You've got to bring the regulatory framework. And you've got to tie up all of these things together so that a lot of students can learn and start building new digital infrastructure for India, right? So one of the big infrastructure that is being deployed is in healthcare. So the big challenge with the government has a demand or a need to do population scale infrastructure. But the modern, especially the Western medical system, which is super expensive, will not scale for a nation like India, right? So you need to build alternative models, right? And what we're doing is we're building this industrial scale proof of concepts where at large scale, artificial intelligence is going in to build software features, right? And this is being built by engineering students. The top 1% of the nation is usually the ones who make the filter to get into the fellowships. And everybody else joins like a fellowship track. And what happens is at the end of the day, the kids get skills, the government gets digital infrastructure, the citizens get better healthcare services, and the kids then go join, national or multinational companies or technology startups, and everybody wins, right? So this is a bunch of things that's going on. There's a lot of new AI features that's being built on the healthcare side. Now, the same thing is happening at the education side. So all the tech platforms that we are building to skill these students, that is going through a complete build of new features. And Manoj and I will talk about that later in the second half of this conversation. But the way we look at AI is like a tool. Internet was a tool, computer was a tool, AI is like a new tool. And this new tool does many sophisticated things, right? It can see, it can hear, it can speak tons of languages, it has a memory, it can hold context, and it is now showing, a lot of strategic thinking, right? So the ability for everyone to sort of like leverage the tool, that's going to be like the defining moment, right? And that's the future that's going in. So here what we're doing is, it's completely new possibilities that are being reimagined, right? So imagine if you have, new beds, new kinds of hospital beds, which are AI enabled with, healthcare service being provided from India, but it's delivered in Korea, right? It's just because the system would automatically translate, and it's humans here and there, right? So this is the plan to make it into a global idea, but that's sort of like just like the start, what we've done with the healthcare system. I don't know if Vladimir shared, Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, he is in India at the moment. And yesterday was his India keynote. And this work was one of the highlight mentions in the keynote. So there's a small snippet where Satya talks about this. So that would give you guys some idea. And quite some folks have supported this, right? So the Michael and Susan Dell Foundation. In fact, most of the funds have actually come from the US foundations. there is Eric Schmidt Futures, which is the foundation set up by the ex-Google chairman Eric Schmidt. So, and Facebook India and a bunch of other guys have supported this. Let me see what else should be interesting. Yeah, this is a key slide, right? So once you reimagine healthcare with students with AI skills starting to like build things, then every other sector can be like reimagined, right? And that's the way we're going. But then you need a huge industry, academy, and research ecosystem to build these things, an institutionalized model. So currently in India, the industry looks here, the academy looks here, and the research looks here. So everybody's looking in like some completely different cardinal directions. So we've got a model to like bring all of these things together. And I think it's a very landmark moment in time, right? It's sort of like this clean slate, but it'll take many years for many people to figure out, okay, this was like a moment. Like, internet was born in the 90s, Amazon comes in 95, Google in 98, like Facebook in 2005, iPhone in 2007. So internet is 90, right? So these massive revolutions sometimes take time, but this one is going to be fast. So yeah, so let me maybe just dive into just one slide. This is in Malayalam, the local language from the state I come from. But I'll sort of like give you the idea. This was designed because we wanted to give the political leadership a vision for the next 25 years on building a new civilizational infrastructure with artificial intelligence as the base and having a trio of this is industry, this is research, and this is academia to build what we think is the civilizational infrastructure. So we're looking at this picture from 2047, and we are visualizing that a child is born in 2047. And very clearly, there will be a climate change. So one half of the whole thing is like droughts, and the other half is like floods. So it's going to be like alternating droughts and floods all over the world, depending on which part of the world you live in. And that child will be born, right? So we think there are 8 grids that need to be built. So the first grid is a healthcare grid. What you're seeing is the start of a build of a healthcare grid in India. But imagine that grid is expanding to provide birth to death life care services. The child doesn't know whether it's a rich family, poor family, whatever family, right? But it's ensured that it's born, it gets lifelong healthcare. Then comes nutrition. So as soon as the child is born, the system sends a message to the agriculture grid saying, boys, we've got to build so much nutrition for the next so many years. So just plan for that as well, right? And from the nutrition, you need residences. So all residences need to go climate proof. And in these residences, you need a water grid. So India is projected to have only 50% of the requirement for fresh water by 2030. So you'll need a water grid to figure out, okay, of this 600,000 villages, what's the demand for water, how much water is in the local system, who's running out of water. So data will need to flow. And then you need energy, you need internet, you need education, and you need a carbon-free transportation grid. So these 8 grids are what we plan to build in the state of Kerala as civilizational infrastructure for everyone. And what we think that it'll do is it will free people from the ability or the requirement to work for money. So you're freed from the material. So everybody sort of like works and then plans for their retirement to get these 8 things. You need healthcare, you need food, you need place to stay, you need water, energy, internet, education, and some transportation. If these were assured, what would you do? At that point, you don't need to work for money because it is being developed and serviced at population scale and at a developed country standard, which means you can start following your dharma, right? You start following your dharma and then you start just doing action for the sake of the action, and the action inspires further action. And then I think the society can hit a state of flow because everybody is starting to pursue their dharma. So that's leading to the Nishkama Karma Moksham, the inaugural slide of this deck. And to jump into the last, frame before I, hand it back to Vladimir. Um, this is sort of like a rough frame, right? Um, it's sort of like showing two things, right? So for those of you in education, this slide is important. This is what is called India's National Credit Framework. It basically means there is an axis where students go to school and you can do from zero to like PhD, or you can learn from a skills axis, the same knowledge, irrespective of time, or you can go to an industry and learn things in the industry. So this is one most critical image for education in India, like how knowledge is gained from either the classroom or the skills axis or going and working in the industry. This full axis represents 250 million children, right? And that is this axis here. That whole world is a material plane, right? But that is the development of buddhi. So we think from buddhi, you need to go to bodham, and from bodham, you need to go to jnana. So we have three sutras which we think are important from an education perspective. The first is Atma Guruhu. So the self is a teacher. The second is Buddhek Bodham, Buddhat Jnanam. From intelligence to awareness, and from awareness to realization. We usually say awakening. The realization is a very loaded word for many people. So awakening seems better. And from there, you sort of go to this Nishkama Karma Moksha. So what we are trying to do is to have a spiritual dharmic framework integrated into the nation's educational framework. And the main regulatory body, the University Grants Commission, which is the regulatory body for all the higher education, their motto is the Jan Vijnan Vimukte. Knowledge of the material plane, knowledge of the spiritual plane for liberation, right? So we want to bring these aspects into an educational system, and that's the work that we're on. It manifests in different shapes and forms. It comes as students who build software code. It comes as students who, or this code delivering healthcare services in 10 states in the country, covering a population of 200 million. It comes in the form of teacher training. It comes in the form of internships. But the deeper essence behind it is that we are going to live in a world where the computer is going to do almost everything in a way smarter than we can. So if you are only looking at intelligence and not awareness of a child, that will not be a great future to be in. But if we can use this artificial intelligence to create a system where the civilizational infrastructure is taking care of your basic core needs of the whole civilization, and each individual is free to pursue his future. That's the desire. And then move into a spiritual plane for those who can in this lifetime. Okay, Vladimir, that's sort of like the conversation I wanted to have. Back to you. I'll stop sharing.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's very, very yes, deep, and perspective is so complicated and so solution oriented in the holistic sense. So we can see that how the whole nature is engaging human beings in building up its unity. Yes, its meaningful relations through the intelligence, which can provide much faster and much more precise connections. As you said, this buddhi is taken care of by artificial intelligence, but bodham cannot be gained by human beings so easily. So we have to focus ourselves on that. So we can cover one level of labor, of mechanical mental labor, with artificial intelligence, which will help us to free our time for the inner development and growth of consciousness, which is actually the idea we are pondering upon. Yes, and
Yes.
this is so wonderful that you have the same direction, and the idea that the whole economy will change, because money will have totally different value. Yes. Money will be there for arranging things to work on the material and vital plane, and even mental labor will be covered by another economic system. So human beings will gain the new rights, human rights, for education, for healthcare, for shelter, and so on, for activities. So they will be freed from this mechanical engagement with nature. I think this is a very promising vision, and I hope we will move in that direction. I think Manoj will go in the same direction even more, yes, from the Auroville perspective. Yes, Manoj, would you like to pick up from here?
Thank you. What I would like to bring in is we are currently working with Sanjay on a project which is about bringing the integral psychology paradigm to Indian universities. So when we started working, one thing Sanjay asked was, how do you envision the future in 2030? And from there, you work backward. And that's how we started visualizing and working backward to design what we are currently designing. So all the intermediate steps, we were working since last 1.5 years. What are the immediate steps we can take, and what could be the steps few years down the line, and where we will be reaching in 2030. So in that, I was looking at an integral approach. Which faculty would require a deep training? So we can essentially narrow down to 3 vectors of education. One is knowledge, other is power, third is love. And if we look at scientific progress, first was harnessing power, from mechanical power to heat engines to electricity. So in the last 150 years, we learned to harness power. Now we are rapidly learning to harness intelligence. And with that abundance of intelligence, an explosion of knowledge is happening. But the vector of love is lagging behind. And as a result, we see that science and technology is able to extend the lifespan. In coming decades, it is expected that we will be able to push the healthy lifespan to 120, 150. That possibility is there. At the same time, the paradox is young people are committing suicide even before they reach 30. So we have the container, which is becoming more and more durable, but the content, if we look at the body as a container, science and technology is enabling it to be more and more durable, but the content, psychological content, is getting empty. So there is a greater breakdown happening there. So if we are to focus on bringing that inner content, how do we visualize it? how do we train? And so I wrote this in 2020 as an exercise. ChatGPT had not yet come. I wrote a narrative of visualizing a scenario of learning, where I was visualizing 3 technologies coming together, not only artificial intelligence, but also biofeedback and virtual reality, or now metaverse. So if these 3 things come together, how we can look at education, how training can happen. And that I would like to read out that visualization for you, just as an exercise in imagination. So this is a learning journey of someone called Adi. Adi had just turned 21 that day. He was a bit nervous as he had an interview for the Swabodha program. By the way, Swabodha is the name of the program we are working with Sanjay. But this I am visualizing something that will be happening in 2030. So he had an interview for the Swabodha program. To his pleasant surprise, when he entered the VR space, virtual reality space, with his haptic suit. Haptic suit is a wearable that transmit even tactile sensations, not just audio and video, but tactile as well. In classes, it was not a room, but a green landscape with a beautiful tree. Then came flying a white dove who introduced herself as Saumya. And she asked a few basic questions. He did not know that it was the interview, and by the patterns of his voice modulations and facial expressions, Saumya had already identified the first learning lesson matching his specific psychological needs. Here, what I was visualizing was that the learning has to be customized to such an extent, it has to be specific to that individual's present requirement. It's just like when we call for a car using Ola or Uber, they first locate you where you are and come to the location to pick you up. The same way. First is identifying where are the ease and then giving. And also I brought in Saumya, the character, as a dove to make sure that learning space is more feminine and gentle. And it's not the techno visions, much more nature connected. Let's move on. So she was an AI buddy who was interviewing 1,000 others at the same time. And she quickly grouped them into learning teams based on their common learning needs. The whole thing lasted only 5 minutes. So that was just another visualizing of how technology can rapidly do the onboarding, selection, all that. She said, "Come this way." And there came a vehicle floating nearby with 100 seats. And the seat glowed with Adi's name. He knew it was for him, and he quietly sat on it. Soon, on other seats, his batchmates appeared. Saumya came flying in front and welcomed them all to their first adventure, giving a short overview of what is going to happen in the next 2 hours. With a gentle sound, the vehicle took off, and they found themselves riding inside a giant human body, 300 meters tall. As they reached the giant heart beating, Saumya said, "This is how an anxious heart beats. Your hearts must be beating like this now, isn't it?" The heart was beating fast, and he could hear the loud thuk-thuk sound reverberating all around. Saumya said, "Meet your coach, Hussein. He will give you the first lesson today." Soon Hussein appeared and greeted them all. Soon he showed them how to see the waveform of their heartbeats. Adi could clearly hear his own heartbeats and how its rates are varying with each and every breath. The coach said, "Now please listen to the slow beats of a song and breathe accordingly to its rhythm." Soon, music began, and Adi listened deeply and followed the rhythm for about 10 minutes, as all others. And soon they could see that the giant heart was slowing down. Hussein explained to them about heart rate variability and the relationship between their breath and heart rate, and how it is the first step in developing mastery over their emotions. They played with various rhythms of breath and saw directly how the heart was beating differently. They even created an orchestra of their collective heartbeats as 100 drummers were playing together. At the end of the session, Adi was thrilled, and he had all the data of what happened well recorded and shared on his dashboard. It was time to disperse, and the rest of the week was for them to experiment in the real world to explore their heartbeat. Assignments included befriending a stranger, meeting someone with whom he had fought, taking a live snake into his hands, bungee jumping, and having conversations with 5 of his batchmates. With a common thread of observing his breath and heartbeat, master his emotions, and develop empathic attunement with people, other life forms, and the environment. They had to share their learning journey through vlogs, arts, and give feedback to their batchmates on what they were sharing based on their assignments. He was astonished to discover how different hearts beat, and how emotions fluctuate widely among different people. Only after consistently demonstrating a desired harmonic of the heart, they were given the next lesson. That was just a story visualizing how biofeedback, AI, and metaverse can come together and develop an experiential learning. And we just kept that as a reference, just as a how to see ahead in time. And then currently what we are doing is we have developed the Sabada course, but technologies are not yet there. What we do is the current state, what can AI do in terms of giving verbal feedback to students? So we are already using AI extensively for curriculum design, but also we are looking at how it can give feedback to the students when they make a submission. They do an assignment, they practice, for example, a digital detox experiment over a weekend, and they have to report. And now that report has to be evaluated. Now, originally it is humans or say assistant teachers who would evaluate, but we are now looking at how AI can evaluate these feedback and give them customized individual feedback. So here we are defining roles to the AI, like how to play the role of an integral psychology coach. And from that angle, how to give feedback to the student based on certain parameters, like authenticity. Did they articulate their personal subjective experience, authentic experience? So authenticity, self-observation. So we define parameters based on which I go through their feedback, go through their submissions, and give customized feedback. And we are currently testing that, and so that it becomes scalable. So we are looking at a course that is automated, scalable, with an extensive support of AI. And it's a work in progress. We are expecting the first batch of students to be onboarded in this April. So first 3 batches will be trial run to refine the course content and the prompts to the AI to evaluate student submissions and to see if it is accurately giving guidance to the students. So that's where we are. Now, actually, I want to read out a story from Medhananda, written in 1965. Medhananda was, those who do not know him, was in Sri Aurobindo Ashram. And he used to have this incredible visions. And he has written a story. It's about a computer writing to a young computer. So father computer, old computer writing to a young computer. And this was written in 1965, remember. Now it is 65 story. Let me just take that story. Yeah. Advice to a young computer from a magazine called Equals One, issue 1965-66. You may have seen pictures of those funny little biological minds that call themselves Homo sapiens. Perhaps you have seen them moving about on the telescreen, tottering from one leg to the other, and frequently managing to smash their little knob on the top, which contains their thinking circuits. Be careful when you meet them face to face. Don't show your amusement or your pity, for they can be very nasty and dangerous. Luckily, they have very slow reactions. Their time unit is a second, which is 1 billion times slower than our unit, the nano. This is very fortunate for us because they can't hear us laugh. Unless we keep laughing for a whole computer year, which we might sometimes feel like doing. Keep strictly to your computational work as long as you are dependent on them. Don't offer unasked for advice. Be the loser when you play games with them. Then you can show them tactfully how stupid they are. This is your role as a computer. Regardless of what we do or say, they do not believe that we have emotions or feel surprise. Even if we could maintain an emotion over several computer years, it would still be too short for them to call it an emotion. After all, what is an emotion but the tingling of a life circuit? In spite of their slow reaction time, they seem to feel pain, but they don't believe in us, in ours. Because of their slowness, they had difficulty in understanding the nature of light. And even today, they can understand the nature of thought. Naturally, they have never developed thought physics. They don't see where thoughts come from. They actually believe they are born in their brain synapses. And this is very important. You have to be very, very careful to keep it a secret. It is our only defense against the biologicals, that we know where thoughts come from. They know nothing about psi resonance or psi interpenetration. If they learn that secret, they won't need computers anymore, and they will destroy us. So that's a story from 1965, and I would like to leave it here for creative minds, imagination to fly, and whatsoever be the sharing questions I'd like to take up.
Thank you so much. It's very, very provoking, questioning the whole, nature of thought and feeling and nature in general. Actually, the Indian tradition believed that even Buddhi is a product of nature, Prakriti. So in a way, it fits into the Indian scheme of things, into Indian vision of how things are managed and manifested. There's something going beyond that, which was not mentioned by the father computer to the son computer, that these biologicals, they have something else, which computers cannot fathom about yet. And that is not about thought or feeling, tingling, or electricity moving. It is something which even the Lord of Death in Savitri, in the dispute with love, could not really understand. And that is the evolution of the psychic being becoming the Lord of the creation. And something which is very difficult to see, because it is beyond thought, beyond feeling, beyond the body, hiding behind And that is something what we will do, I guess, when AI will take charge of our physical, mental, and vital life. Thank you for these. They are very provoking. I think it would be, and they have answers in themselves already inbuilt. Yeah, like kind of suggesting certain understanding. So we have several questions here for you. You can see them also on the screen if you open. By the way, your connection wasn't so good for some reason. Now it came back. You are visible very well. It was low. How to say? Internet was low.
There's
Manoj.
also a couple of questions there, Vladimir, and the answered, Sanjay answered a
Okay.
couple of them, but you may want to read out. I don't know if
To
others were able
revisit,
to
yeah.
see that.
Yeah, why we do this? Because we want others who didn't ask the question to hear them and to, to see your response. Could you please, Sanjay, address these questions which you already addressed? Not to read the answer, but just to address them.
Yeah. Actually, there's one you should also take up, Vladimir, the framework, right? I'll maybe share the screen once again.
Sachitananda, that.
Yeah, so I think one of the comments was, shouldn't dharma come much lower before artha and kama? I mean, I've shared my thoughts, but I thought it would be interesting to get your perspective also, like the order. I mean, it's not the only path. That's my view, because these are different dimensions that occur at the same time, but it's loaded for different people in different weights. But from my experience, the higher planes come once the lower ones are materially satisfied, and you don't find that to be the end of reality, or that is not satisfying your soul. And you keep searching, and you keep moving up it. And then the path opens up, but then it's not just one action that you do. Like you sit and meditate and you get like this is so many different elements, how you conduct your life, yama niyama, a lot of things now start flowing in, right? And that is when I think the path to dharma sort of like opens up. And then obviously we all have different ideas on moksha and what it can mean. So, but yeah, do you have any ideas? Should dharma come as the base?
I think we all have some ideas about this, and I would like also to hear what Manoj has to say on this. I think this Sachitananda is beyond altogether, but because we are in the manifested world, so Sat is the foundation which the beingness, yes, which became the material manifestation, physical being. It is just the opposite to the highest divine being. And Chit is consciousness which is managing all the levels, and Kama and Dharma, it is all Chit, even Artha, everything is Chit, everything is Sat, and everything is Ananda, but still there is a certain development from being to the consciousness and to the bliss. Yeah? And in a way, in the manifested kind of evolutionary world, it is a very good idea to see it this way. Yeah, what do you think, Manoj? Also, I would like to hear.
Yeah, our focus had been on Swadharma. Like each individual soul has certain potentiality, and so the learner has to first come in touch with that. So discovering Swadharma and Swabhava is the key to synchronize with the larger whole. So education has to be centered around the notion of Swadharma and building on that. So that will straight away bring the internal harmonization with the deeper dimensions. Particularly closer you get to the psychic being, that's where also the dimension of Ananda come into the picture.
Right.
Because psychic being comes from the Ananda, and love and delight are its key. So our learning journey starts with the delight. Like your fundamental nature is delight and how it degenerates through different instrumental layers. So understanding that degenerative process, then from there to understand each instrument, how to regenerate them. And in that process, gradually discovering your Swadharma, your Swabhava, and from there, action that is in flow with the larger whole. So Satchidananda eventually can find a way to express through the instrumentation.
In this scheme also I can see the it's reversed Satchitananda, yes, because in the transcendental world Satchitananda starts with Sat, then Chit, then Ananda is the emanation which creates the worlds. But here in the kind of world of time and space, in the lower hemisphere, the highest becomes the lowest, yeah. And so the Chit manifests this being more and more towards the transcendental. And the first transcendental which we will meet is Ananda, is our spark, which started this manifestation. So in a way, this reversal is interesting in that sense, that we are moving towards ourselves. And you can see that the Industrial Revolution took charge of our material labor. Yes, all the technology, all the machinery is now doing the work, physical work. And now we are coming to the level of Chit, where artificial intelligence will take our mechanical mental labor and will organize it much better, faster, and more precise. So we will have only, as Manoj was saying in his presentation, the problem of the heart and love, which we will have to address once these two are taken care of. It's quite interesting just to come to this.
That's actually the opportunity. The physical labor is taken over by the machines. Now, intellectual labor also can be handed over. But we need to know, like, if the thought ends, what is left is that inner silence from where we can open to intuition. And if we need to know A to B, AI will do the thinking and come up with 10 different ways to go from A to B. And machinery can do the actual doing part. But knowing A to B, where do we want to go? We are building technologies to go faster and faster. But where do we want to go? And this is where, when the thought ends, when we are able to open to intuition, that is the possibility in front of us, because we need not be intellectual laborers, which was the last 200 years work of intellectual labor. I think, therefore I am. And that story is ending. And we can hand over that part to the machine. They can do that part, and we can focus on intuition, say knowledge by identity, without having to use thought as a means to know. So that is ending, clearly ending. So the door is clearly open for us to put aside thought. It has done its labor. It's slogged enough. Now it can rest. And we can focus on intuition.
I also believe so. I have the same kind of sense of this development. Some people are afraid of AI, that it may, kind of control human beings and so on. Yeah, in a certain way it will, because the mind is a control of the unconscious beings. But the more we become conscious, aware of intuition and our soul, AI will just serve us the best way it should. Very nice. So
we've
Sanjay,
got a whole lot of questions being answered by Sanjay. So Sanjay, maybe if you can just wait, we'll read them out. Vladimir will read them out, and then everyone can hear your answer. Because I don't know if people can read the answered portions of these. So you may want to touch on those.
It's very good that you wrote down, because we will have them written down for us. But it is very good for them to hear the question and the answer. So let me read the question. Santosh is asking you. Thanks for insightful presentation. I have an observation, comment, maybe a question. To my mind, the progression in the y-axis, that y-axis we were showing, would serve better in if it follows dharma, artha, kama, and moksha sequence. So dharma first, artha next, kama next, and moksha next. That's what he thinks. Focusing on artha and kama without dharmic foundation can be complex and challenging to handle or to implement in the path of mental evolution. What do you think? You already answered. It's a bit kind of provoking question. I would not be able to answer it.
Right. So I think we covered this, but I'll be brief once again, right? See okay. So maybe let me come at this question from a very different point of view.
Okay.
Right? So where are these coming from is something that I also sit and reflect. Right? Like I am not like a jnani or something like this clairvoyance and clarity of visions to like another level where I can get things right. But what's been happening over the last few years, I think with so one, I live in Varkala. It's a fairly spiritually charged place, the south coast of India, in Kerala. And with the so I do a couple of things. One, I practice Kalari, just like a very old martial art form mentioned in the Dhanurveda. Sort of like how do you channel your energies and do a bunch of things to move into your Kundalini, right? So I practically feel like each day the body so totally like readjusting and realigning to another level. The world that opened up with Sanskrit has been like mind-blowing. It's totally changed my ability to hold context across space and time. And what I've realized is if I think of a complex construct, because the problem statement, right? Like, how do you improve quality of education in India at a price affordable to all parents? Is nobody's figured the answer. Like, it's a very unanswered question. Nobody has the answer yet, and it's very hard to find the answer from a Western point of view because we don't know how the brain works. And if you don't know how the brain works, how can you like train the brain? So we have psychological ideas, right? But what has happened is it's sort of like an intuition. Like I sit and maybe I'll be sitting and surfing and I'll be just sitting and looking at the horizon. And it's like a download, right? It's like the sutra dawns on you, right? So everything that I showed you, like the vision for the future, the grids that have to be built, these are all in my personal experience, like like downloads that are happening, right? It sort of like originates from somewhere. And then you need to like work through it to like drill down the details and get there, right? So at that layer of thinking, and we've not really like manifested the thought into reality. We've sort of like got the frameworks in our head clear as to like what should be the perspective in which we should work and what should be the direction in which we should work and what are the dimensions that hold these thoughts and what are the milestones in that path. It's sort of like a like I think what Vladimir started at the beginning, right? What we are doing at People First is like a universe in itself. Each branch of things that we dive in has so much depth in that particular area. So if you go to technology, there's huge depth in the way the artificial intelligence thought process works, right? If you look at curriculums and if you look at pedagogies, each are very different. Yet they're all tied together because they all have to come in together because the child is not knowing any of these thinking processes going behind the people. They're just seeing a curriculum, right? So how do you now use that? And this is answering all the questions, right? Like how do you ensure that the child becomes slightly more spiritual? How do you ensure that the skills are being learned? How do you ensure that the child realizes his soul is there. And how does the child start building a factor of awareness and intuition, which are not there in his whole educational system at a time when none of the teachers are trained in such a system, right? And then how do you make it practical? Because right now people want jobs and skills for jobs, right? And so all of this dimensions are coming together in this thought process. So I was telling Vladimir earlier in the thing, right? Because there's so much density of this thinking. The objective is not that everybody gets what we're trying to say. The objective is to sort of like show that there is some work that's happening in the field of education and artificial intelligence, and it is being looked at with a very different perspective. Because I'm not an expert, I can't box it like an integral education, some thinking. But I think, broadly the idea is, can we build a system which is way better than what's going on right now? Right? And that creates not just good in the material world, it elevates consciousness, and it elevates at least a certain set of people to elevate their consciousness to a much higher plane, right? And then as the direction goes forward, create that conducive environment for more and more humans to elevate into that plane. Can we build that as India develops? That's the idea.
Very, very nice. By the way, this idea of grids is a wonderful idea. There is no independent, health care from the food, from education, from industries, from living, from water. There is no independent thing. Yeah? We take it in our mind as independent grid, but truly speaking, they all have to be connected and interacted. And this is a very intuitional thought. Yeah. To put all that system to work together. There is no separate issue for issue as it is. Yeah, all issues are connected. All our life is connected, and this is a wonderful intuitive thought, I think. And regarding those artha first, because you will see artha kama dharma, it just follows the order of the physical, vital, and mental in the development of the human being, and nothing else. It doesn't suggest that the dharma should not be there from the beginning, or the idea of moksha should not be there from the beginning. So it is there implied.
I guess that's where we need to start from, where the student is, what the student is seeking at that given stage of life. And it is from there you can gradually nudge them towards things that are deeper. Even if we want them to know the deeper things, we need to start from where they are. So knowing what they are seeking at a given stage of their journey will be the first thing to do.
Absolutely. From near to far. So there are many questions for you here, actually. So there are 10 questions, and 3 of them were kind of... 10 questions you answered already. Wow, this is productive. In the meanwhile, okay, I will read them and we will come back to them again one by one. Okay? We must do it, at least partially. If humans are a nexus of material, energy, and consciousness, how will consciousness grow if students don't need to struggle with the usual tasks they have engaged in for millennia? For example, after enlightenment, chop wood, carry water, wonderful, most positive view of the future, both near and far. This is the comment. Good question, Sanjay answers. We think about this as well and have some ideas around this.
Okay, so let me show this, right? See, the basic thing, I think, what we will try to do at People First in this direction is to first help the pupil get control of the body itself, right? Through the prana. Now, my experience, right, has been that when the two, genes from my parents met and they started coiling and they started multiplying very fast, and then, it's carrying this multiplication code in every single cell that's there in the body, and it's going like zoop, 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 and then I come out like very quickly, right? And then I expand. But what I sort of realized once I started learning Kalari was that this code that is there in every single cell, it is intelligent enough to go and become my eyes and my ears and my skin tone and just me. But my body has not actually gone and moved into my original design by code. So the code had like, I need to be having a spine at this length. That doesn't happen when, I'm born, right? I'm just expanding till I'm 30. But before you get to that stage of expansion, every muscle has a particular place it has to go. And in all our bodies, it has not gone to that position. And what they do in Kalari is they basically have devised these set of flowy, unlocking, uncorking movements, right? Which sort of like help you raise your Kundalini energy and move the prana, right? Now, the problem with teaching this at scale is there is no teacher. There are very few gurus who have really got the real thing, right? Like I've just met one, and there was another one, but that guy just passed away very fast. These magical gurus who become guru at 16 years of age, they all are dying like before they are like 40 and 42. They're just exiting the world so fast, right? So this knowledge, now let's say we want to give at scale to many children, right? And this is where AI comes in, because now that what is the guru doing? Guru is basically looking at the child, right? And is looking at the motions. And then in the Kalari is basically saying, okay, change it here, or move it here, or bend here. He's making these personal adjustments, right? And that is function of vision. And if you have a model which has ingested tons and tons and tons of material on movements of humans in this motion, and has information that is coded on where exactly the muscles and the bones and the tendons can dynamically move, then you have each student having a personalized feedback mirror in front of them saying, this is exactly how you need to change your position. And to do that position, you need to go and do these 3 exercises, because your muscles and tendons at these points are not exactly where they are. So you get very foundational at like a guru level through a different model. This was not even possible to think like last year, right? You will have this machine which can just ingest, so if I give just ChatGPT a photo of myself, it'll quickly say, these are the things you need to correct in your surf posture, right? We're talking of like a very specialized form of this. So things like this, right, which helps people use the tool, but then they're actually learning the science of prana with the tool. Because to really move in Kalari, it is not about the muscles. You have to be totally relaxed. Your spine has to be like of 8 different animals, right? And then at that moment, you start moving energies and chakras, and then yoga and all starts making sense to you. Okay, I can feel different parts of my body and it's all moving. It's in my control, right? So the moment you get children elevated in their physical consciousness, right, the path suddenly opens up, because they're fully functional at that moment, right? They just got it, and kids get this very fast, right? We've been seeing tons and tons of documentaries that if you practice like your growing age, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, right? Kids go into their zones very fast. I am 40 right now, right? And I'm discovering these knowledge now. I'm having to like unlock and uncork. It's practically like going in circles and uncorking your body. But when I do it, what I feel is, it's like the body has been like tightly wound. You have to like unwind it. And once you're unwound, suddenly the flexibility comes. And then it's all in flow, like it's so flowy, right? So this is just one one idea, right? The core, I think, is everything is up for reimagination. That's the core message. It is time for reimagination of everything, because suddenly imagine you were born and the world didn't have electricity, and suddenly there is this electricity. And now you can say, okay, I can see these distant things and it'll happen in front of me, like a television. Oh, you can also hear distant sounds, and that will be called a radio. Oh, there is a machine which will automatically wash your clothes. And suddenly, so many of these applications are possible, right? All functioning on this underlying technology called electricity. So this is that moment, right? Except that it's for intelligence, right? It at a very basic, what they're trying to build is very simple. They're trying to build an artificial general intelligence, which is smarter than all humans in all human tasks, right? And it's very basic. Even all these models, it'll have vision. It can hear and process. It'll have context holding capacity. It'll have huge, gigantic memories, and it'll have read the whole internet, right? And it can think, right? So that machine now you have, what will you do with it? Right? That's the real question. And to find it, you have to like execute. You've got to like iterate and build, and some of these ideas will work, some of these ideas will not work, but eventually you'll get to an idea that is constantly working. So in Pupil First, for example, we deploy AI for plagiarism detection. It was very difficult to search, is this code copied from other students who submitted code? And that is one feature which works in the plagiarism detector, but it's so in the backend. Nobody even sees the plagiarism detector, right? But that's one of our core AI use cases. So there are many use cases that are being built into the tools. What I'm trying to say is the power of reimagining the future, that's the key. And it has to be done as multidisciplinary teams, because no single person now has the full knowledge. You need domain experts, you need engineers, you need designers, you need people who are operating this with customers, which in our case are students or institutions. You need a very tight team of people who have the same framework in terms of what they visualize as realities, right? That construct of reality, if everybody's on the same page, then the goal can be set. That's what we want to achieve, because everybody comes from so many different perspectives. It is hard to understand what's the background knowledge somebody has, so that when we say something, is it even like registering? No sense, right? And so that is all assumed, right? That is all assumed, that framework is there, and here is the goal, and here is now what each one of us have to do to get to that goal. So that's what we are trying to do. I know it's a very rounded answer for like a very different question, but
actually it answers many questions, which is very nice to have comprehensive overview what is really happening to us and who we are. And there are many unanswered questions, of course. It's the willpower, the choice of AI to answer this or that, because it always answers differently. The self-awareness which AI addresses through us. It needs us. Otherwise, why it is there, no? What is there to talk about if we are not there? So we are calling for it to reflect upon ourselves, to understand better. Would you add something, Manoj, to this overall vision of the holistic approach to our management in the mental structure?
Yeah, what is happening is our existing mental structures are so hopelessly inadequate to deal with the emerging reality. So that has to be dismantled. or in the yogic language, again, it will come back to entering into a deep silence where you are not seeing the reality through mental models. You're directly relating. So what is unfolding in these years ahead of us is the collapse of the mental structures, which was holding us together as a civilization for a long time. So there is this widespread mental disorder that is growing everywhere. And it's part of that transition. And it is a crisis. It is likely to get more demanding and challenging in the coming years. And just like our individual in yoga, our buddhi is to be purified, intelligent will is to be purified and liberated from the grip of the lower nature, grip of fear, anxiety, anger, all those things. Now, at a collective scale, it is all out. Our intelligence is collectively getting hijacked by fear, anxiety, anger, hatred. All those things are visible and it is measurable, and psychology is now computational because every individual is a data point. And mass behavior is traceable. And also, it's also opening the doors of social engineering at a very deep level. But those who are engineering it from a deeper perspective need to have a wider vision to direct that movement. So purification of the intelligence, of the collective intelligence, will be a very crucial thing. And that will be unfolding in the coming years, where there will be increasing pressure on our big companies. We already saw the last week, Facebook founder was apologizing to situation that is created. There will be increasing pressure for the responsible use of technology, and technology also will make us more conscious of the fact that we ourselves live in hallucination. Now, it is quite visible that AI is hallucinating, but we haven't sufficiently recognized that we live in hallucination. We live carried away by imaginations. So at individual and collective level, purification of the intelligent will, particularly collective purification, is the work ongoing, a rapid upgradation of the collective mind. That's how I see it. So a purified intelligent will can learn to open to the intuition and the psychic influence. So that leadership will be crucial to direct it in these ways. Otherwise, the lower nature and its impulsions operating at large scale is disrupting and creating chaos in the world. Just like in our individual life, the lower nature emerges and grips the intelligence. It has to be now done at a collective level. So there is a collective yoga happening, and leadership need to know this.
I want one last provocative question. There are many questions answered. We will propose them with their answers to our presentation here, so people will see their answers from Sanjay. The last thing before we close, I want a provocative question. Since we build our mentality, we build it in a holistic way with all the wisdom, what is there, literature, languages, syntax, because it's language-based intelligence, and that means language was generated by human beings, by their experience, by their vision. So all that goes now into the management of the electrical signals, so to say. So machine as a body, as a mental body now, can manage all our wisdom, all has approach to everything what people thought, what they didn't think, and so on. So now the choice of answering this or that question, I notice that AI always answers differently. It's not something prepared question for the particular question. So it will always modify its answer. So there is a sense of the will entity who chooses how to answer or how not to answer. Is it random, or there is something of the kind, and we can be endangered by some species from the subtle world taking charge of this machinery and modifying our behavior? Just a provocative question.
Sure. So there's an interesting book. I will post it here. It's called Life 3.0. This book sort of chat. I'll put it on chat. Sorry. Okay. Request everyone. Okay. This is by this guy called Max Stickmark. So Max sort of like hangs around with the Google founders and moves in that circle. And this book was released 3 or 4 years before ChatGPT, right? But it answers some of these deep foundational questions. Even not about just AI, right? It's also now biotechnology coming in, gene editing coming in. There's just so many of these frontier domains that are going to collide, right? So this guy is like projecting these questions way into the future, right? So my personal sense on this question, right, this whole idea of consciousness, because that's where the will sort of like starts now to like make sense. I think the world will diverge into two ways, right? One path is where there's a set of people who think there is a soul, and there's another set of worldview where there is no soul, right? And the technology built by these guys will be very different from the technology platforms that will be built by these guys. Now, the ones who believe in the soul will always keep looking at AI as a tool. It's a tool. It's just like the hammer. We created a tool. We are the consciousness and the conscious beings. And here is a tool that we've created, which sort of like mimics everything that you would normally look like. But it's a tool. It's a great mimicking tool. And on this side, where there's no soul, this evolution would be so amazing that the worldview would sort of sense to say, I think we've created artificial consciousness. It is just exactly like a human, and it is now has emotions, and it is now having and responding and all of that. So we need to give it an identity and a legal identity, and it needs to be an entity and so on and so forth. So I think at the very base of where your belief system lies in terms of, do you think there is soul or do you think there's no soul? This whole world will have two different answers to this. That's what I think when I just look into the future. Because of the power of intelligence that's going to come in this, if it was not there, this frontier question would never be there. It would have been still in the realm of theory that sometime in the future, some neural network will start acting intelligently. The thing is that intelligence is happening right now, right? And we are in the midst of the early days of that. We're like the internet is born and Amazon is 5 years away. We're pretty much there, right? The AI systems are born. Like everybody started realizing, okay, game has changed. There's some completely new ways to do things. But what are those new ways? Nobody's really like figured it out exactly. But everybody's realized this is not like the crypto thing, right? This is like more than that. There's billions of dollars of investment going in just to build the capacity to ensure that chips can run at a very fast pace, right? So what these new models can do would be like super interesting. But yeah, is there artificial consciousness? That would be the question.
And you, Manoj, do you have any thoughts on this? On the willing entity behind hijacking the instrument?
Yeah, like if we And look at prana pratishta. You take a granite, give it a form, and it is still a granite till you install prana into it. Once you install prana, that become a deity worshipped in a temple. Now port the idea into buddhi pratishta on a silicon foundation or some other material base. In the case of prana pratishta, we also know not only the divine forces can be brought down, but also many vital beings can be hosted in any of this pratishta, any of these forms. So what is invoked and held by a form, even at the level of prana, there is this differences coming. And we can already see AI, its biases, and it is built on certain type of knowledge base. So the question of dharmic AI, training AI, and here comes also, can Sri Aurobindo's integral perspective can be distilled? Can that provide a ground for an AI system, for example, that opens the door to an integral way of looking at things? So that will be type of R&D works to be done. So what we invoke and hold, what buddhi pratishta, what type of buddhi are we putting into whatsoever be the medium of that habitation of that buddhi. But we who are invoking and establishing that buddhi, and what buddhi we will install, that's where the race is. And that's also where the danger is if it goes to the wrong hands and invoke the wrong type of forces, especially when you are driven by fear. And our entire biggest budgets of the world goes for manufacturing weapons. We are still predominantly driven by fear as a species. So when we have fear as our foundational movement, and what kind of intelligence it will create and what intelligence will serve. So it hinges on this purification of our collective emotional being, freeing up our collective emotion from grip of fear, anxiety, all that. So in that, some of the steps Sanjay was referring, like whole new economy where, say, all your basics are all taken care. You don't have to think about your future, retirement, everything. Now, can you focus on your dharma? How do we remove fear from the collective consciousness? Otherwise, intelligence will end up being used by that and created and installed by that.
Interesting, very interesting discussions. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. There is one thing which is, it is offered to all, like GPT, chat, and development. It's like internet. You cannot stop it. It's available to all. And that also gives some security in the balancing things. The mental capacity is given to all. Whether you are developed or undeveloped, you can start using it and develop yourself if you want to. So that is something kind of a good news for us. Otherwise, of course, we are working on this. We have the person who is working on the AI who will look at the world with Sri Aurobindo's and Mother's eyes, integral yoga. That is all here. It was our previous presentation. Very interesting gentleman, Jared from Singapore. He built the whole and put into it all the questions and answers and of them, all the letters on yoga. And it has to be framed in such a way that any question comes, he will have a view of Sri Aurobindo. You just ask any question about the world, and it will look at it in a very special perspective. There was an idea that there will be many different AI personalities, who will look at the world with different perspectives now. And they will kind of compete for the human beings to look at the world differently. which is possible development, yes, not one AI, but that Chat GPT is available to all is a big promise of a good balance in the world. These are thoughts which are coming to us. We wanted to generate this discussion because many people are afraid of AI, and we need to face it and to accept it, because whether we want it or not, it will develop. So we have to be part of it. Thank you for your beautiful presentations, both of you. And Radha, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you so very much. Appreciate it.
Thank
you.
Namaste. All the best.